I know it's called Motor City because of Detroit, but if you're calling a movie Motor City, I really want at least one really long car chase. In 1970s Detroit, John Miller falls for a local gangster's girl and lands in prison for a crime he didn't commit. With his life ruined, Miller plots revenge against the man who took his girl away. What's up everybody, welcome to the channel, I am Nick, and today we're going to be reviewing Motor City, the latest Alan Ritchson action film, and I was able to catch this one early with a screening at my local theater where we get to see unreleased movies on Mondays some weeks, and yeah, this was a pleasant surprise in a lot of aspects. Now, the presentation of this film is interesting in the fact that there is absolutely zero dialogue in the film. There's some times where they will just do an occasional one-liner, have a character have like an oh my god kind of response to something, but as a whole, the story goes through everything with very, very little dialogue, and this is a presentation style that I think works really well at a lot of points, where there's moments where we have characters reacting to some situations that are either really good or just devastating to happen to them, and because there's no dialogue, it sometimes feels like there is more emotional weight because all of the response goes into what the actors show in their face and just how they're moving in the scene and everything. So I want to commend the actors on that. Alan Ritchson, Shailene Woodley, they all did a very nice job like conveying all of this emotion with hardly any words. So I do think that style does bring in some more emotion than just saying like, oh no, this is really bad that's happening to me. So I do think this style does work in a lot of different ways, but there are some points where the lack of dialogue does make the story suffer, where we do lose some emotional connection to the characters as the depth isn't really created too well, where emotional connection can work at points with the way the actors are like bringing you in, but a lot of that is them kind of carrying that weight because the characters themselves are very paper thin because we montage through all of the setup for them, and yeah, it's an action thing, so we aren't really caring as much if this was just a standard like drama film, but I would have liked at least more connection to these characters, more connection to the story, because without that dialogue, it just kind of feels like we're watching the concept of innocent man was framed, here's his revenge tour, rather than this is John Miller and this specific story. Just kind of feels like we're watching a formula. So there are points where the lack of dialogue can sometimes cause disconnect to the story and characters, but as a whole, I do think this presentation does make it interesting compared to some other action films around in 2026. Now, without the dialogue, the movie does put a lot of emphasis on its soundtrack, and it's all 70s because this movie takes place in 1970s Detroit, and at times I do think this works to add some personality and like a splash of that into this film, but at other times, kind of like that song, there's like this entire movie is like they do something that works really well at some points and then that same thing doesn't work at others. We're listening to the entire song through these montages to set stuff up, and it's at points it kind of rubs off more like a music video than it does watching like just an actual montage with the song in the background, where when I was watching it, I was like, this is what people who hate Baby Driver think Baby Driver is. Like, with the way that sometimes that movie can feel like a music video, but in a very cool way. This time it's kind of like, okay, the editing is kind of cheesy at some points in these montages, like especially at the beginning when we're setting up the relationship between John and Sophia. That can sometimes feel a bit like a cheesy 70s rom-com movie. And like I said with that setup, it does montage through a lot of stuff, which can make it a bit rough at first when you're sitting in the theater, but once this movie gets going, I really think this movie just gets going, because with this 70s style, it's doing a throwback to all those 70s pulp action films from that era, and I really like those movies. I love 70s action films just as a whole, so I loved the throwback that they were doing in this one, and that action, just the hard-nosed, no holding back attitude in all of the action, like the third act especially, some of the action just gets brutal and just brings me back to those 70s films, and I love those, so I really loved the action in this film, and just the entirety of how they're able to throw back, just the visuals reek of 70s films, and it just has that like motivation to throw back to all of that. So there's definitely personality to Motor City. At no point does this movie feel generic in a stylistic sense, because what it's doing just gives it so much identity of we're doing a modernized 70s action film. We have our little soundtrack here, and of course the no dialogue style to make this run differently than some other action romps in this decade. And with that entire third act sequence, that's when the action really heightens up to the most like intense that it is. We have the biggest like revenge motivations. Like that entire third act is just genuinely an adrenaline fueled finale to the movie, and just everything they're doing. The elevator scene, there's a fight scene in an elevator, and that scene is just pure awesome, like on display with the action there. I will say though, the final like 2-3 minutes of this movie are it hurts to say, it is laughable. It's not a horrible idea to end the movie with, but my god, the execution, the entire theater was just laughing hysterically because of how weird and just out of place and kind of corny that ending was.
You serious?
Just the execution of it and how they decide to go about it and how they finally utilize some things. They're trying to be super cool with it and like kind of aura farm with the characters, but as a whole, it just kind of feels more corny and cheesy than like really being cool. But before all of that like goes on and like ending the movie on that note, the momentum it builds from really just the second act forward is really great. And I would honestly, like, the more I think about this movie, the more I do enjoy it, because I wasn't expecting this no dialogue approach when I went into it, so I was kind of thinking, okay, what am I in for? But thinking about it more, knowing what it's wanting to do and all of that, the more I reflect on it, the more I kind of enjoy it and wouldn't be opposed to watching it again, because really the pacing of this movie is really great. Like, this one clocks in over 90 minutes a bit, and like that's a short runtime, but even then the movie just flew by. And even though like I'll have my issues with it, and we'll get to that score in just a few minutes, I really did enjoy my time watching Motor City. And of course the unreleased factor does go into that, so I'm removing any bias that could be in like, haha, I got to see it early and you didn't.
Somebody get these beggars out of here!
There's issues to it, but I had a fun time, and I especially loved the throwback that this movie did. Now, before I get into my final thoughts, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We hit our 100 sub goal last month, and we are going to try to get to 500 as quickly as we can. And make sure to like this video if you are excited to watch Motor City. Motor City delivers on some awesome 1970s vibes and high-octane action all throughout. The non-dialogue approach is interesting in many scenes, but in others it can cause drawbacks in emotional investment. Alan Ritchson is a lot of fun leading this action romp and everything, making this a certified dad classic. My final score for this one is going to be a 3 out of 5 because I do have that emotional disconnect at a lot of points with it, with the exception of the actors' responses to things. But it's a fun time. It's a really good like summer action flick for what it's doing, and I'm sure it's going to get a lot of enjoyment out of people. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and go check out Motor City if you can. We're in that in-between of the Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day, so if you're looking to see something, I already saw the Odyssey, waiting for Brand New Day, wouldn't be opposed to checking out Motor City. Thank you all, and I'll see you later.